Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting of the CMAQ Project Selection Committee to order. As permitted by the Governor's Disaster Declaration of October 15th, 2021, the determination has been made that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent for this committee. To ensure that the meeting is as transparent as possible, we will post the meeting materials approximately 1 week in advance, provide a recording of this meeting linked on our website, and we'll take all votes by roll call. With that, Elliot, can you call the attendance list?
Yes. When I call your name, please state that you're here, and if you are filling in for someone, please state your name. Please state who you're filling in for. Darwin Burkhart.
Here.
Doug Ferguson.
Here.
Mayor Grasso.
Here.
Mark Pitstick.
Here.
Chris Schmidt.
I'm here.
I see Tom Rickert is here filling in for Chris Snyder.
Here.
And Jeff Schreiber.
Here.
Great, thank you. Moving on to agenda changes and announcements. At this point in time, staff does not have any agenda changes or announcements. Does anybody on the committee have an announcement? All right, well, hearing none, we'll move on to approval of the minutes. Included in your materials were the draft minutes from September 9th. Do I have a motion for approval?
Let's take motions to approve.
Thank you. A second? Thank you, Mayor.
Burkhart, second.
Elliot, would you do the roll for the approval of the minutes?
Darwin Burkhart.
Aye.
Doug Ferguson.
Aye.
Mayor Grasso.
Aye.
Mark Pitstick.
Aye.
Chris Schmidt.
Aye.
Tom Rickert.
Aye.
Jeff Schreiber.
Aye.
All right, thank you. And the minutes pass. Moving on to program monitoring. So included in your meeting materials were the status sheets of the active projects and the deferred projects in both the CMAQ and TAP programs for your information. Also included was an obligation report. I would like to report as we've moved into federal fiscal year 2022, but going back to federal fiscal year 2021, the program obligated $30.6 million in CMAQ funds in 2021, which is significantly under what our goal was and what our federal apportionment level is. We are monitoring. We do have $77 million in advanced construction in the CMAQ program. So if those funds had converted, we would have been close to meeting our overall goal. But we're going to have to probably spend a little bit more time over the next year kind of actively trying to get projects moving forward and also converting them once they've gone into AC status. Any questions on the report? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to project changes. Elliot, can you handle these?
Thank you, Doug. We received 2 project change requests from the sponsors, both of which are presented to the committee for formal approval today. First is Niles' North Branch Trail Connection Project. It's currently approved for $15,000 in TAP-L funding for Phase 2 engineering in 2023, and $360,000 for TAP-L for construction and construction engineering in 2023. The sponsors are requesting to advance construction and construction engineering to 2022 and also transfer the $15,000 in TAP-L funding from Phase 2 engineering to construction and construction engineering. Sponsors targeting the June 2022 letting, and they are locally funding design engineering to meet that target. Staff recommends the approval of this project. And second is IDOT's Illinois Route 64 Smart Corridor project. It's currently approved for $896,800 CMAQ for Phase 2 engineering in 2022, $80,000 CMAQ for right-of-way in 2022, and $12,328,000 CMAQ for construction and construction engineering in 2023. The sponsor is requesting a cost increase for Phase 2 engineering of $1,103,200 CMAQ in 2022, and a cost increase of $148,000 CMAQ for right-of-way in 2022. Sponsor had the initial engineering estimate underestimated certain items especially when it came to interagency coordination. But I will note, if you look at the project change requests, that they do anticipate that the actual construction costs may be lower in the future. That's the request that they have presented today, and staff recommends the approval of this project change request as well. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Elliot. Hey, Brian Carlson, I believe you're on the phone. Could you maybe provide a little bit more detail on the 64 Illinois 64 Smart Corridor project?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I mean the phase 2 was estimated based on a percentage of the estimated construction cost from the phase 1 report, as was the land acquisition. Subsequent to that, we've actually advertised and selected a consultant for phase 2, and based on the work hours and tasks, the request that we're asking is for the actual engineering cost. I think the project is a little more complex as far as phase 2 than it was anticipated in phase 1. I also understand that there was a lot of unknowns in phase 1 as far as, this is a smart corridor, so there's a lot of upgrades to existing traffic signal equipment. And unfortunately, from what I've been told, nobody could find the keys for the cabinets, and nobody could get into the controller cabinets to find out what the actual existing system was comprised of. And so now there's more information in phase 2, and they were able to determine what the actual scope is going to be for each one of these intersections as far as the equipment upgrades for the smart corridor. So that resulted in obviously a more extensive phase 2 and design engineering required. And then subsequent to phase 1, we're actually getting some appraisals in for the land acquisition, and the land acquisition is higher than was estimated in the phase 1.
Great.
I can answer any other questions you might have.
Does anybody in the committee have any questions for Brian? All right. Well, sorry.
Yeah, this is just Mark Fitstick, RTA, just clarifying. So that's phase 2 engineering that we're talking about, and we don't usually use CMAQ for phase 1 anymore, right? So that's why, but we are paying for phase 2, and in this case, there's a lot more work in phase 2 than phase 1 because of the nature of the project, a little different than a normal street reconstruction or widening project, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, the scope is not a traditional highway improvement project. It's not a traditional interconnect like we've normally done. So, yeah, I believe it was underestimating phase 1. And yes, you are also correct. IDOT, we funded the phase 1 out of our program.
And we have CMAQ funding for the construction phase, but we're not changing that at this time. There may be a subsequent change to that. Either could be an increase, could be a decrease, right? Depending on the engineer.
That's correct. That's correct. We will adjust in the future based on actual plans and quantities and pay items, and when we get a detailed engineer's estimate for phase for construction.
Thanks, Brian.
Yep.
So we have 2 change requests that staff is recommending approval. Do I have a motion for approval?
Rickard motions to approve.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Are there any further questions or comments on the proposals? All right, hearing none. Elliot, will you do the roll?
Darwin Burkhart,
Aye.
Doug Ferguson,
Aye.
Mayor Grasso,
Aye.
Mark Pitstick,
Aye.
Chris Schmidt,
Aye.
Tom Rickert,
Aye.
Jess Schreiber.
Aye.
Great. The project changes are approved. They're also included on the agenda was administrative modifications. There were no administrative modifications that were submitted since the last meeting, so we have nothing to present here. Moving on to project status update procedures. Included in your packet was a memo detailing a potential change that staff would like to implement as far as the status updates are concerned. Currently, we do biannual status updates on projects included in the program. We'd like to make this move it to a quarterly basis. This is putting it in line with the SDP Shared Fund program. The deadlines would be exactly the same as the SDP Shared Fund. We hope that one, it would increase the knowledge base that we have on active projects and potential projects that are in out years of the program, so that we can better control the programming in individual years, move projects up that are ready to go. And with the ultimate goal of being able to get more projects obligated in a federal fiscal year. FHWA at the IDOT Fall Planning Conference called out the unobligated balance of both the TAP program statewide, but also the CMAQ program as well. So I think there's going to be a little bit more scrutiny of the program, and we'd like to be more reactive to being able to respond to project changes. So included in the memo was language that we would include as part of the active program management policies that would call for the quarterly reporting on projects. And we'd be using the same form as the SDP Shared Fund. So in cases where there's projects that have multiple fund types or associated with them, they wouldn't have to fill out a different form. They could use the same form. If there's no changes on a form, they could just, there's a box that they could check where they would just essentially say no changes to the program, and they just resubmit that. There wouldn't be a lot of, we don't think there's an additional burden there. But so what we're asking for is just approval to do quarterly changes, changing it from biannual. So are there any questions from the project selection committee members?
I guess I'd like to just make a quick comment. I'm not opposed to this, but I think it's might just be an additional administrative step. I'm saying that because I think for over 10 years now, we've been dealing with processes that are outside the control of the agencies, and we talk about this every year, and we know that a lot of our reviews and approvals have not been going as quickly as we'd like to. I love the days of 20 years ago when we could submit an agreement, a funding agreement, and within a month and a half, 2 months, we'd have the agreement back. And now a lot of these agreements take over a year in Springfield. And so it's kind of it's a new day, and it's you know, I think in the last couple months, things have been a little bit quicker, but not much. I mean, I hear of different agencies waiting for agreements as much as 15 months, sometimes even a year and a half. And we need to figure out how to get back to the 2-month time frame that we used to have turning around funding agreements. And So I just mentioned that, not that I'm opposed to the quarterly, but I don't think that this administrative exercise is really going to help with the spending of these funds. So it's just a comment.
And I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you on the spending of the funds because I understand the delays, but we're in the position of trying to do the programming of these funds within the TIP and the constraints there. The ability to move projects in and out is dependent on having current and accurate information. And I'm not saying, so to your point, when projects are delayed because agreements are taking longer, we would have a better idea of that at a sooner point in time, and may be able to swap things in and out for different federal fiscal years. I mean, right now we're programmed to the hilt, like as far as like we can't like shove anything more into the active year at this point in time. So, and I know for a fact that there's projects that are going to be looking to move forward, either the new ones or other projects that were programmed in out years, and being able to do that without, we're not trying to drop people out of the current year if they're actually going to move forward, but understanding that like just trying to make that balance. So it's not so much that we'll be able to get individual projects to move forward, but we may be able to get funds going for other projects that are waiting to move in, if that makes some sense.
Yeah, and I think it does. It's the reason why I'm not opposed to it, Doug. I just feel like there's a much bigger issue to ensure that these good quality projects are moving forward in a good time frame. And but no, again, I'm not opposed to it. I'm just thinking there's some other concerns that need to be addressed if we're to actually ever deal with the whole programming, the active program management.
And I mean, we continually have discussions with Springfield on this topic. I'm not sure I have a good answer for you on that. If it's all right with the committee, I'd like to call on Emma Dobbs to, so she's done this with the STP shared fund from the very get-go, and she has some experience with the quarterly updates. So, Kama?
Thanks, Doug. I think, Tom, yeah, there are absolutely real issues out there. From CMAP's perspective, though, because we aren't the implementers, it's anecdotal. So having a schedule-based status update really helps us to kind of put the facts behind those conversations that we're trying to have. So that's one reason. The other thing, most folks were also on the STP project selection committee meeting this morning, but again, somewhat anecdotal because the program is still pretty new, but prior to 2017, the region was averaging about a 57% obligation rate with STP funding. We're up to 67% now in our first year of the local program, second year of the shared fund. So I think that, from the perspective of using the status updates to keep up with what Doug's talking about, being able to move projects off of contingency or off of out years into the forward year and move stuff back, helps with that overall obligation rate. It takes pressure off if there is a delay from an agreement review or anything else. It lets us know that there's a delay and we can shuffle stuff around appropriately. So that's kind of my plug for status updates today.
Again, I'll make a motion to. I don't know if we're even moving this. I apologize, but I think again, I'm not opposed to it. I think this is a good process, and I also think that working with the state recently on the 1440 is also helping to start moving things forward, and so hopefully we can get some of these agreements moving quicker, especially since we're being allowed to proceed forward as we're waiting. So.
And as probably you're listening, user of submitting status updates, wanted to verify that if you're switching the system, that we're getting rid of the redundancy of having to submit separate updates on the engineering and construction phases. Is this STP system that we'd be switching to also one report per project, or at least per state job number, as opposed to sometimes where I've had to copy and paste the same information 5 different times.
This is correct.
Across the course of a project for each year and each phase it was funded in, So if this is a more efficient system, then I think that with fewer redundancies and maybe focused on the fields you really need to do that task of moving the money around, then it won't be as much burden if you made it take half as much time, then you can ask twice as often. It's, I guess, the mode I'm talking about.
Yeah, and yeah, we do hope that it doesn't become overly burdensome, that it does make some improvements in just like the way things are presented. And if nothing has changed on the project, it's as simple as a checkbox at the top of the form and just hitting resubmit.
Okay. I think that one fact is what makes this, not quite as burdensome as before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are there any other questions or comments from the committee?
I'll make a motion to approve the staff request to change from a semi-annual reporting to a quarterly reporting. The agenda, I think, inadvertently used biennial instead of semi-annual.
Oh,
so that's not the same thing. So I'll make that motion. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will second that for my dot. It's Chris Schmidt.
Thanks, Chris. All right. Well, we have a motion on the floor. Is there any final comments or questions? All right. Hearing none. Elliot, will you call the roll?
Darwin Burkhart,
Aye.
Doug Ferguson,
Aye.
Eric Grasso,
Aye.
Pitstick,
Aye.
Chris Schmidt,
Aye.
Tom Rickert,
Aye.
Jeff Stryber.
All right. The change passes. Moving on to 7.0, the program development. So as probably most of you know, the CMAP board and MPO policy committee approved both the TAP and CMAQ programs. The CMAQ program was subsequently found, the projects included in the program were subsequently found to be eligible by FHWA and FTA. Staff is currently working on getting the award letters out to sponsors. Hopefully we'll have that process completed by the end of next week. And we're still trying to schedule an implementation meeting for sponsors. We're hoping to do that virtually so that there won't be any travel involved. But with that, I would like to kind of pick the brains of you as the committee as far as like potential improvements that we can investigate over the next year to either the process or the evaluation criteria for the next call for projects that we will kick off in January of 2023. And with that, so I know Chris Snyder had mentioned like doing some sort of threshold for qualification based upon points. Staff is going to take a look at that. I know there's a couple of other different ideas. We'll be looking at our inclusive growth score and if we can do anything better on the equity side. So with that, I would like to open the floor to the committee members to see what you guys are thinking about. Well,
okay. Yeah, this is Mark Pitstick, RTA. I don't have comments myself, but I do know that the CTA has some comments they would like to bring up. I see that Sonali Tandon is on and also Leah Mooney. So ask that one of them could say some words about some comments.
Yes, that would be great. Sonali, if you'd like to address the committee, go ahead.
Yeah, Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Doug. And hello, everyone. I'm Sonali Tandon, Senior Manager for Strategic Planning Rail at CTA. And I really appreciate this opportunity to discuss the project analysis criteria that is used in the CMAQ program development process and present some ideas for consideration. We also want to thank CMAQ Committee for providing funding to CTA's electric bus program and the Red Line Extension project, both of which are critical investments in the region that will provide air quality and transportation benefits. While the Red Line Extension project received $30 million in funding, and we are very, very appreciative of that, we felt that the evaluation criteria was limiting and did not capture all the benefits of the project in scoring. We understand that CMAQ funding decisions are not purely based on scoring, and CMAQ criteria has evolved over the years, but would also encourage this committee and CMAQ to consider refinements to better capture the benefits of big transit investments. And Doug, thank you so much for acknowledging, looking into the equity criteria and also the inclusive growth, because that is one of our comments too. In fact, the first comment is consideration of equity in project evaluation. Other regions and agencies are also incorporating equity-based criteria in project evaluation. In fact, the RFI on Capital Investment Grant Program that FTA recently released asked feedback on how to incorporate equity in their evaluation. Traditional cost effectiveness measures do not consider equity benefits of projects that invest in underserved communities, and not that these communities often disproportionately suffer the negative effects of air pollution. CT acknowledges that the primary consideration for CMAQ projects is the cost effectiveness of projects' air emission reduction. And while there is already a CMAQ inclusive growth scoring category, the magnitude of cost effectiveness score is 60 points, which largely overshadows the inclusive growth score, which is only 10 points. So there are several options to address this. As I mentioned, the scores and the weights could be adjusted for inclusive growth, which is only 10 points, or the cost effectiveness. There could also be new equity-focused criteria that perhaps consider some of the disparate health outcomes. And there are some examples out there. CMAP also currently has population sensitivity criteria only for direct emissions projects. So that could be looked into for other project types. There is Chicago Air Quality and Health Index that could be expanded to the full region. RTA has a well established and thought out critical needs areas criteria that considers equity and several other considerations. And then LA County Metropolitan Transit Equity Index is another example that could be used to guide developing equity-focused criteria. Our second comment is that eligibility limitations may negatively impact project scoring. For example, the RLE project has a lot of benefits that are at different scale than some of the other typical projects evaluated under CMAQ program. And current scoring for benefits is not set up to capture the difference in scale between projects. So perhaps there could be more flexibility in the criteria and scoring for projects that are differently scaled. And depending on the project type selected, some sections of the application workbook cannot be populated. CT understands that project type categories are required and intended to help CMAP and public understand the focus of projects. However, selection of a certain project type sometimes limits the project score. And one example is that we did not receive a score on travel time reliability for Red Line Extension and received guidance as part of the Q&A in the webinar that rail extension projects would not improve on-time performance as it is creating new service that does not currently exist. We believe that a rail extension project such as RLE would in fact improve on-time performance, and travel demand modeling demonstrates that thousands of people would be able to use this dedicated guideway rail service in lieu of bus service and would be significantly able to reduce their travel time. These travel time and reliability benefits were excluded from RLE scoring, while some of the bus service improvement projects were eligible to receive a score on this criteria. So that's just one example. And to address this issue, CMAQ could allow applicants to make the case for their project benefits, irrespective of the project type or subtype. And CMAQ staff could use professional judgment whether the benefit would be eligible or not. And this type of evaluation could also be limited to projects that are of a certain magnitude. With that, I'll pass to Leah Mooney on discussing some of the other scoring comments that we have.
Thanks, Sonali, and thanks to the committee for hearing us out and listening to some of the things that we have been thinking about since going through this process recently. I think one of the things that really came out for us, and as we were talking about kind of the score that RLE received, I think one of the things that occurred to us most was that, you know, a project like that doesn't really fit into the scale that we typically use for projects that go through the CMAQ program. And that makes sense. A lot of them are smaller projects, they're investments in vehicles, they're, you know, a single station. This CMAQ money in this case would be really a share of the overall funding stack. And I think for that reason, it's hard to look at it with the same level of cost effectiveness. So just as the scale for the project benefits really didn't include all of the benefits of the project, the cost though was incorporated in its entirety, right? So you have kind of a situation where if we were to sort of be able to give a score for every benefit and the magnitude of the benefits for a project like RLE, you might just sort of redo the scale such that some of the other projects would look like they're sort of, you know, tucked together, closer together at the bottom. And that's because this is a major regional investment, right? It's not just sort of a one-off project. So one way to do that is to try to find more ways to give credit for benefits, but again, you kind of risk making the scale sort of off. And another way to do it is to consider whether we count all of the cost, right? Because we did count all of the cost for RLE, including the money that would come to the region from the Capital Investment Grant Program. And so I think the main thought here is just that we should consider understanding the trade-offs both ways, whether there are things that we want to do to adjust costs where either CMAQ is only providing a piece of the funding and we can sort of substantiate that other sources would be providing the other pieces, or where we're actually bringing resources to the region. So in this case with RLE, you wouldn't otherwise get $1 billion from the federal government for this investment. It's only coming because of this project, right? And in order to get that $1 billion, we have to come up with, you know, money across the spectrum from the region, whether it's, you know, local CTA bond or whether it's other, you know, future transit TIF, or if it's, you know, a share of the CMAQ pie. So the thought here is that we could potentially look at modifying that cost effectiveness to, well, still reporting on and sharing the entire project cost. So that's important information for people to have, considering adjusting that cost effectiveness score, either by excluding things like capital investment grant funding that are actually just a bonus to the region, or looking only at the CMAQ share of the contribution. Sonali, did you want to talk a little bit about the other ones, or should we just, how do you want to handle that?
Yeah, I think just one more point that we wanted to make is it would be helpful to get more specificity in guidance for certain areas, and this could be done by looking at previous Q&As that were submitted in past, so that everyone is at the same level playing field and everyone has the same information to go off. That's just one suggestion. And there were like certain areas specific areas where we have thoughts like ridership estimation or basis of cost, and maybe asking more detail from applicants. And if it's helpful, we can provide more specific written comments around these.
And I guess I would sort of add too that one of the things that I think is really important with this is that we were reflecting on the final project score for RLE mostly, and thinking about why it kind of scored the way that it did. But to me, that kind of emphasizes the fact that not every project is going to fit into this scoring. As much as we want it to, as much as we want to have the scoring work for all project types, there may be situations where a project is like RLE, full benefits aren't really being captured, and some of the cost effectiveness is maybe understated. So in those cases, I think it is really important to be able to have the opportunity to take into account other factors besides the project score itself. So I would encourage the committee to continue to be able to do that rather than setting a threshold. And I will say that we are really grateful to Mark for representing transit on this, and for CMAP for all the work that their staff puts into evaluating these applications, and to the project selection committee for working on this, because this is such an important piece of the regional funding pie and really important for getting to our overall shared regional goal of reducing air quality impacts and improving our environment. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Sonali. Thanks, Leah. We'll definitely include these as in our notes, and as we progress through the next year, and things that we take a closer look at. Anybody else from the committee want to make any other comments on improvements or things that they would like staff to take a look at over the next year? Keith, did I see you raising your hand? Or
yeah. If you formally need to ask Jeff to let talk to me, one thing that just from explaining the process yesterday to one of the project managers whose project wasn't selected, I want to note that that in this conversion from the pure air quality scores to the scoring, to the point system, that one thing we lost, and I think we should regain, is reporting out the scoring by the category, or at least the grouping by project type, as opposed to just being in the grand list, because realistically we have in the call for projects book and the scoring, we have a number of different scoring grids there based on projects. And so to have something that's a project that's based on the transit criteria listed in a grand total ranking against something from the direct emissions or from the roadway projects, kind of risk the returning to what I'm a veteran of back in the old days, which is the methodology wars. We don't really need to have projects from different modes trying to goose their systems points above, so they would have an advantage over the other modal groups. So I think returning to reporting the scores not in one grand list, but within the buckets of the projects that are being evaluated on the same criteria, I think will help avoid advocates of one type of project trying to ask for changes that would hurt another one, but also kind of show that we're comparing apples to apples, oranges to oranges, bananas to bananas, instead of having a whole fruit salad.
yeah, we can definitely do that. Any other comments from the committee members? Well, I mean, if you don't have anything right now, or if you have an idea that's not fully fleshed out, please feel free to send it to Elliot or myself or both of us, as we're looking at putting together like the different staff that we need from our research and analysis team to investigate different things. We will be working on updating the information that goes into a lot of the criteria analysis, whether that be the planning time index information, getting that updated. So please feel free to let us know what you're thinking. We want to make sure that we're capturing the benefits of projects and also being able to evaluate them and present them in a manner that's helpful for the program development. So with that, we'll move on to 8.0, 2022 meeting schedule. I think the first thing that you're going to notice is there's a date on here in 2021. So as we were trying to put together the dates, we tried to align them with not only the Transportation Committee, but also the IDOT letting schedule, so that projects that are coming in for changes can do so in a manner where they can get the changes reflected in the tip and in time for going out for IDOT's letting. So we would like to hold a meeting on December 2nd. I would hope that the committee would be amendable to that. I know we're not giving much advance notice, but we wouldn't have another one until February. So the difference is we could hold one right after the new year, but it makes it difficult, as late December is difficult for people getting project change requests in and staff being able to evaluate them. So we thought if we did it earlier, we could postpone our typical January meeting until February. So I don't think we need approval on this, but I generally would like the committee members to agree that this looks good. We understand that these dates may have to change based upon other factors. Who knows what's going to happen with the infrastructure bill, and if one gets passed and something changes with that where we need to meet at a different time. So any questions or comments on the schedule, and is everybody amendable for adding the December date?
Hey, Doug's Darwin. I always had the December 2nd date on my calendar. I don't think this is new, at least not in my view of it.
Oh, well, we may have proposed it originally, but I thought we didn't schedule it. So I apologize if we did send it out. That's good to hear. At least somebody was ready.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I'm okay with it too.
And differing from past years, we'll send out meeting invites to all the committee members so that you have these on your calendar. Was something we didn't do before, but I think it should be something that we're actively doing to help you guys just keep track of what's going on.
That'd be helpful. Thank you. And you can start it December 2nd too. I don't see it on my calendar, but I have it on one area that I wrote in pencil, and in the other area I don't have electronically. So it seems like there was something mentioned about it, but I don't know where or how.
I think we penciled it in, but and maybe I forgot to notify you that we were not holding it. I'm not sure. So my apologies for any confusion. All right, if there's no other comments or questions, we'll move on to public comment. We did not receive any advance public comment through the transportation email. If there's anybody in the audience that wishes to address the committee, please unmute yourself and give us your name and all right, well, not hearing anybody. If you turn your camera on and raise your hand, I can call on you. Just want to make sure that no one. All right, well, moving on to the next meeting. The next meeting will be Thursday, December 2nd. There will not be an SDP Project Selection Committee meeting that morning. This is just for CMAQ and TAP. So just in case there's any confusion related to that. With that, is there any other business that the committee wishes to bring up today? All right.
Doug, I just have a quick question. This relates to your previous thing about public comments, but also I noticed earlier It doesn't seem like GoToMeeting has a function for raising hands or anything like that. I mean, I'm on, unless I missed it, I've been on 3 different meetings today on 3 different platforms, and I was looking around, I can't find any mechanism to do that. So
No,
something.
I don't think it does.
Okay.
Participants can always use the chat to let us know if they want to. So I'll just make a better point of at the beginning of the meeting of letting people know if they wish to address the committee to put it in the chat.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. Any other business? All right. Well, hearing none, I call for adjournment of the meeting. And thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Doug. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye.